Hello, everyone. Welcome to a second episode of The Essential Libertarians, giving you the tools you need for self-governance. I'm returning with Daniel Bitro, host of The Quantum Effect, which you can find on YouTube by typing Daniel B. If you're interested in keeping the Ron Paul revolution going, the ideals of Murray Rothbard, the fundamentals of capitalism and voluntary exchange, head over to the LP Mises Caucus, where you can learn about our platform. You can click on resources, our actions, learn about the Libertarian Party, about values of self-ownership, individualism, and voluntarism. Our basic message is simple: no more wars, no more lockdowns, no more bailouts, no more mandates. Individuals can make the best decisions for themselves, but it depends on you getting involved. So go to the lpmisescaucus.com. So I wanted to do this second episode because...
Hey, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello? Let's give it a second here. Just give it 1 second here.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened. Yeah, sometimes connection issues happen.
Yeah.
You know, hey,
All right.
the free market works, but it is not perfect. So I wanted to make a second episode because a lot of people, even in the Mises Caucus, think they're great people. But as I've talked about before, and I fundamentally believe this to be true, right now in America, we have a lot of challenges. People won't talk to each other, inflation. There's a lot of issues, in my opinion, being caused by the federal government and through their subsidiaries and cronies like corporate media, education. You can even pull out a few others, or some people in tech. There's other people who are manipulating the conversation and creating a divide, especially politically. Now, the options are we can try and change rulers, which doesn't seem to work well. We can keep going on this path, which, in my opinion, leads to civil war, or we can do peaceful divorce. I'm a peaceful divorce guy because I fundamentally believe at the end of the day, regardless of external problems that may arise, you do not morally have the right to say, hey, you have to share a government with people who not even just dislike you, do not want anything to do with you, and wish bad, malevolent things upon you. So that's just my basic shot is this. You don't have a right to make someone share a government with you. And I'll even extend that to if there are resources in a certain area, then it should be negotiated, but I still think you have a right to leave. I discussed this with my dad because I brought up PA leaving, and he said, well, what about Biafra and in Nigeria? And I said, they should be allowed to leave. Just figure out a way to do resource distribution. So that being said, though, I get some objections. I'm sure you've heard them. So let's dive into them.
Yeah.
The first thing, I'll hit the left objections, then I'll hit the right objections. I'll hit some. So the biggest one I've got on the left is, hey, you can't leave because we need you to subsidize everything. We need everybody to be there. So because you need to pay taxes, you need to be involved in the system. And I think that's an easy one to debunk just by saying simply, you don't have the right to my labor. The federal government does not have a right to coercively tax me, and they're printing money out of thin air. Eventually, they're going to cause hyperinflation. So it's best if we go our separate ways. Plus, you have no right to make me pay for something, even if you think it's the most moral thing. There's also the argument from the left and the right that, and this is actually a good argument until you look at the history. Well, Kareem, Lincoln kept the Union together. He did. but he killed 5% of Americans doing it.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and if you watch Gone with the Wind, when I grew up, trust me, I was like, the Yankees are good guys. The South had it backwards. They were all pro-slavery. Lincoln's a hero. He fought those bad Southerners. Andrew Jackson was a bad guy. General Lee was a bad guy. Then I watched Gone with the Wind. Then I looked at some Confederate history. I'm not justifying. I agree with the abolitionists. But if you take that out of the equation, Lincoln did horrible things. The North did horrible things to the South, like destroying infrastructure and hurting people. And the way a lot of people died was infections, because if you have a civil war, well, there's not access to hospitals. So do you want to die from like, okay, I got shot, there's a bullet wound? They didn't even die in nice ways. Like, so yeah, the biggest one I'm going to hit on, and if you want to add to this, is Lincoln kept the Union together.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say, because I did just start my live stream, I had to reset it. Everything's cool now. Just a quick introduction. I'm here with Kareem, as I have been for, I think, the last 3 podcasts now. He is a active member of the Mises Caucus. He would you call yourself an anarchist?
A voluntarist or an anarcho-capitalist.
Voluntarianist. Okay, I like that better. And we both pretty much we both are in the Mises Caucus, and we are similar in almost everything except, like you said, I think I'm more of a minarchist. I'm getting there to the point where I don't know. I'm still working out some things in my own philosophy. But back to what you said, just quick introductions. And if you do like this video, comment, like, subscribe, and most importantly, share the video so other people can get this content. It's not suppressed by the YouTube algorithm. All right, let's continue. So on the peaceful divorce thing, the thing that I have to say is this. As we said before in your episode, I think it's the better solution. But one thing I didn't mention, but I wanted to bring up, as you said, in history tends to show us that peace is possible, right? And I said that human nature shows us that violence is the most probable, but violence is always followed by peace. That tends to be the scenario. There's a big conflict, sometimes long, sometimes short, but there's a very, very violent conflict. And afterwards, there comes a time of peace. And this continuously happens, right? Throughout civilization. Now, the question is this time, will we go through an extreme time of conflict and violence to see a time of peace? And the second one is, will we be able to see a time of peace? Will America be able to sustain a violent civil war if it comes to that, if we're not able to go to the peaceful divorce route? Like, which one do you think that I know which one is better from a humanitarian standpoint, but which one do you truly think is more likely?
Well, okay. Here's the fact that I think I'm more optimistic than most people. And I know people are going to point to Somalia and things like that, but I think Americans have higher civic capital. And I can tell you why I think that. And it depends where you're at, obviously. But since we have higher civic capital and property rights norms and things like that, I think we can actually achieve some good degree of separation without using violence or coercion. And even, I'll give you the worst case scenario is, if you were alive around the time of Black Hawk Down, with the deposition of the Barre regime in Somalia, which Somalia is probably one of the worst examples. Warlords were fighting each other for a while, but then it died down considerably to where the homicide rate in Somalia was about that of Mexico, which isn't good for here, but it's very good to their standard. It shows me that even in the worst societies that have very low civic capital, very low trust, rampant violence, that they can even find ways to work with each other. And that's a country of 10 million people, so it's not small. And they achieve social cooperation. So even in the worst things of history, you kind of actually see that it's possible to achieve peace, and we're much better than civic capital wise. Most countries. There are countries with higher civic capital, I would say. I'm going to tell you why, but that uh, I don't think we actually even need to go there.
Yeah. So I see exactly what you're saying, and I think, as Ronald Reagan said, whether you like him or not, he had this line from A Time of Choosing, a speech he made in 1964. And one of the lines was about a Cuban man who said, "This is the last place on earth to look to for liberty and peace. If this place is gone, then the last bastion of hope for liberty and freedom is gone. It's the last place left." Now, we can argue that things have gotten much or progressively worse since then as far as liberty goes, and I'd probably be one to stand on that argument very firmly. But the case of the matter is that America is still America, and we still have by far the most well-written Bill of Rights. I have a lot of critiques of the Constitution. And one thing I on my list before we started, I was making a list of things I wanted to go over. One of those things was the Bill of Rights. And then I started to think, you know what? Why don't we go over the Articles of Confederation? Because I really think those are much more have much more proportion and are much more profound than the actual Bill of Rights. I think it's what led to that, but I think the Bill of Rights is just so not only well put together, but so thorough. There's a reason why we're not Australia yet. There's a reason why we have not become like a Nazi Germany yet. There's a reason why things have not happened yet. But the only way doctrines stay alive is if those who occupy the nation keep them safe, protect them from tyrannical dictators and authoritarians who seek to tear down those doctrines, who seek to rebuild doctrines of disparity, of radicalism, of totalitarianism, of all these policies that come in conflict with their doctrines. And if you think politicians are not going to mold the doctrines, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, if you think that they don't have the capability of manipulating what our founding fathers have put on paper, well, then you haven't been watching the news, because anyone knows that the Patriot Act violates two amendments. Everybody knows that these COVID lockdowns were against the 14th, the 4th, even the First Amendment. In some places, you couldn't express your right to your religion. They shut churches down. They've been violating the Constitution since, as far as I'm concerned, since the 20s. I mean, there's been cases, but I'd say consistently since the installment of the Federal Reserve, there has been a massive increase in unconstitutional policies. And I'd say the first one we can look at is when the federal government said, for the means of this war, we shall temporarily make our citizens pay income taxes, but it will be temporary. It won't be forever. It's going to be temporary. Well, it was never temporary. The Patriot Act was not temporary. These COVID mandates and these policies and the masks, look, have they gone anywhere? Okay, there's been some things that have been lifted, but a lot of things have stuck. So everything you let the government do, whether all of it stays or not, there will always be remnants. The remnants are what you let them get away with. Those things that stuck are the things that we, the people who are supposed to be self-governing this nation, right? I think our founding fathers were more anarchists than they were any sort of, they didn't want a democracy, right? Like the famous Jefferson quote, where a democracy is simply when 51% of the people get to steal the rights away of the other 49. So they were anti-democracy. They were about a constitutional republic and the smallest, most minimum basic state possible. And I just would like to ask you if you wouldn't mind going over the Articles of Confederation with me. I can bring them up now.
Yeah, and I also have them as well. That's one thing I'm gonna emphasize a few points. So thank you for all of that. And that the biggest objection on the right, I think the best one, even more than China, because China, I'm like, okay, like look, decentralized armies, as we see in Afghanistan, can beat centralized ones, even in that case. But the biggest one is, why don't they just follow the Constitution? Okay. The Constitution, they're only going to follow if someone reveres that, and the Bill of Rights as important documents. Stefan Molyneux made a good point. He said when the federal government has all hands off, there's no Bill of Rights and no Constitution, like in Iraq, they'll do the same things as these warlords that you claim are so bad, maybe even worse, because they have more advanced weaponry and capabilities and a larger army. So I would even say here, the Bill of Rights is the only thing slowly stopping what they're doing. Otherwise, people like, your people like your senators and politicians you revere are just as bad as these warlords. They're just finding ways around the Bill of Rights. And even saying you got someone, let's say you got a constitutionalist, Rand Paul and Thomas Massey, in the executive branch tomorrow. Are all the alphabet people going to suddenly go, oh, I need to read the Constitution and learn about it? And that's more like, is the CIA going to go, oh, we've been wrong the whole time? The NSA is going to turn around and say, man, we're violating the Fourth Amendment with metadata collection. Is the FBI going to do it? Is the EPA going to do it? Is the ATF going to do it? Because I'm pretty sure they're violating the second just by existing. So that's my main thing. If they have no incentive to follow the Constitution, which a lot of these alphabet agencies that act on their own don't, they're not going to. And you can say, well, why don't they just follow the Constitution all day? It's almost like saying to conservatives, why don't criminals just follow the gun-free zone sign? They have no incentive to. They don't care. I'm a criminal. To me, that actually makes me want to go at it more. And on the politician side, people like Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi say, ooh, I can make tons of money, enrich my family by going to these public positions, saying the right things, paying lip service, and then I can make a ton of this. Don't even have to do any hard work. It'd be easy and nice. So that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm an Articles of Confederation guy. And I don't think the parties have changed to me. The Republicans and Democrats are the Federalists, saying we need a strong federal government. Even your buddy in Virginia, even if he does win, which would be better for students, Lachlan would still believe in a strong federal government, I believe. So are Democrats. Libertarians tend to think along the lines of a stronger federal government's not good. Now, we vary in how far we go. Classical liberals say we want some, maybe like a military and police and some road things. Minarchists would just say military, we're done. And ANCAPs say, well, let the free market decide everything. How far we go, I don't know. But we also have the Articles of Confederation here. So we can actually go over that. Do you want me to screen share it?
Yeah, actually, let's do that. I'm trying to fix something real quick.
And then, and let me actually preface what because I always teach the Federalist Papers. Oh, the Federalist, they never talk to you about the other side. I notice that's funny. They're like, I talk to a lot of conservatives. They're like, they don't want the Constitution being taught. They don't want the Federalist Papers or the Bill of Rights being taught. Yeah, that's bad. They should learn about that history. But even funny enough, I'm like, well, if we're going to teach them, you don't want documents censored. No, I don't. What about the anti-federalist papers where we can have states act independently? I don't know why we have that. Can't they just follow the framework we have now? Doesn't it work? If it worked, why are we having this conversation? And just to give people who say, well, I think it worked well, it worked for about 100 years. That's better than most. But the Han Dynasty was relatively free, and it worked for 500 years. We're not on this track with Joe Biden and whoever else. We're not going to make 500 years. We'll make about half of that. So it only took you 46 presidents and about 200 years to go from give me liberty, give me death to I want to see what you're doing in your bank account if you put $600 that we printed out of nowhere. That is none of their business. We went from that here to huge government in a very short. Yeah, it's long for a human to live that long. Okay, but it's not long historically. That 250 years is nothing in history, in my opinion. That's about how long it took from right now to where we're at. To we went from freedom to tyranny very fast, in my opinion. It took a while, but I have it up here. Which parts do you want to go over?
Hey, you're recording this, by the way, right?
IB.
You are?
I am.
Okay, good. Because my thing just I don't know what's going on with OBS. I think it's like my encoder settings or something.
Yeah,
I'm not.
OBS.
Yeah, I don't know how to fix it. I'm sure like I have to like update my settings because it's not my computer, like my CPU and my gigabytes are good, but it just crashes after like I go on like a tab or something like that. But I'm just gonna record this from here. And then if you want, you can send me the beginning part because that was pretty good when we got into that. Anyways, let's go back into the Articles of Confederation.
Yes.
And let's just start from the first one and let's break it down.
Yeah, let's break it down because I think, to me, like people like I go to Republican groups, I go to Democrat groups, and they all ask me what's the solution. And then when I tell them, they don't like it. They're like, Kareem, I want my liberties back. I'm like, I get you. They're like, can we just get Trump back? I'm like, I don't know. I don't think that would work. Even if he did everything right, that would work for 4 years, and then you get someone else. So it's not a good long-term solution. So that being said, how do you get a good long-term solution? I believe it's in these two ideas right here. And let me preface the Articles of Confederation. This was more of an anti-federalist document, and the anti-federalists claimed 3 things would happen that would cause problems before I even get into it. And they're this: because the federal government would be far away from the people, then they would undermine what's called republicanism. I'm not talking about Chris Christie or Mitt Romney or modern day Republicans. I'm talking about the fact that anti-federalists want a republic that's more of a commonwealth, that's closer to the people. As Tim McMaster would say, people want transparency, and the more close it is to you, the more transparent it is. Even if your mayor is being bribed by someone, you can go down and solve that. You can't do anything if it's in Washington. So they feared that the government would be too far away from the people and it would be dominated by special interests. Hey, my senator's signing stuff with, getting money from the military industrial complex, and suddenly we need to fight Iran. Why is that happening? Because they're so far away. You don't know what's going on. They also said, now we have 2 sets of tax collectors. Sometimes, depending on where you live, it's 3. It's federal, state, and local. That's ridiculous. Why? So yeah, they can collect taxes more efficiently, but why do we have 3 things? And they also said the Constitution could establish, or people who are too far could establish, eventually a tyranny, because these people are so far away that they would be able to subjugate other people, through the power of Washington, which everything the anti-federalists said was right. They also talked about term limits. And that's all I hear about. Oh, well, Nancy and Mitch are in there too long. Yeah, we want term limits. These guys said that. So everything, in my opinion, they predicted that would happen bad did. So the debate in America should not be, is America a bad, terrible country, or is America a great, awesome country? I like living here. I think it's a great country to live in. If people don't, they can leave or relocate or do whatever they want, like Tom McDonald says. But I don't think that's a good debate. I'm going to preface this by saying, yeah, America's a great place to live. But Patrick Henry was right, and the people behind him were right, and we should have listened to them. So sorry for that long preface, Daniel. But I think that's what I've learned, and that's what I wanted to preface it with. Patrick Henry was right, but let me prove it. Let me not just say that. Let's read it. So, Articles of Confederation. Historical background. While the Declaration of Independence was under consideration in the Continental Congress, and before it was finally agreed upon, measures were taken for the establishment of a constitutional form of government. On the 11th of June, 1776, it was resolved that a community be appointed to prepare and digest the form of a confederate to be entered into between these colonies, which committee was appointed the next day, June 12th, and consisted of a member from each colony, namely Mr. Barlett, Mr. S. Adams, Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Sherman, Mr. R. Livingston, Mr. Dickens, Mr. Keene, Mr. Stone, Mr. Nielsen, Mr. Hughes, Mr. E. Rutledge, and Mr. Gwinnett. On the 12th of July, 1776, the committee reported a draft of the Articles of Confederation, which was printed for the use of the members under the strictest injunctions of secrecy. This report underwent a thorough discussion in Congress from time to time until the 15th of November, 1777, on which day the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union were finally agreed to in form, and they were directed to be proposed to the legislatures of all the United States, and if approved by them, they were advised to authorize their delegates to ratify the same in Congress of the United States. And in the event they were to become conclusive, on the 17th of November, 1777, the Congress agreed upon the form of a circular letter to accompany the Articles of Confederation, which concluded with a recommendation to each of the several legislatures to invest its delegates with competent powers, ultimately, and in the name and behalf of the state, to subscribe Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union of the United States, and to attend Congress for that purpose on or before the 10th day of March next. This letter was signed by the President of Congress and sent with a copy of the articles to each state legislature. On the 26th of June, 1778, Congress agreed upon the form of a ratification of the Articles of Confederation and directed the copy of the articles and the ratification to be engrossed on parchment, which, on the 9th of July, 1778, having been examined and the blanks filled, was signed by the delegates of New Hampshire, which I find interesting if you look at what's going on in New Hampshire now with the Free State Project, Massachusetts, Bay, Rhode Island, and Providence Plantations, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, repping for the home team, Virginia, and South Carolina. Congress then directed that a circular letter be addressed to the states whose delegates were not present or being present conceived they were not authorized to sign the ratification, informing them how many and what states had ratified the Articles of Confederation and desiring them, with all convenient dispatch, to authorize their delegates to ratify the same. Of these states, North Carolina ratified on the 21st, and Georgia on the 24th of July, 1778. New Jersey on the 26th of November following, Delaware on the 5th of May, 1779, Maryland on the 1st of March, 1781, and on the 2nd of March, 1781, Congress assembled under the new form of government. So that's the history. Do you want to break it?
Yeah, I want to break down like the actual articles.
Okay, so keep going.
Yes. Just you don't have to read anymore, but just go to the part where it shows each article and what it is.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure exactly how
You're good. That was a good introduction, though, for sure.
All right, Articles of Confederation. So we went over the history of how it came to be, like all the logistics. I went over why it's important. What does it actually say? Because this is important. Articles of Confederation. Act of Confederation of the United States of America. To all to whom these presents shall come, we, the undersigned delegates of the states, fixated to our names, send greetings. All right. So do you want to just, I'll highlight this.
Article 1.
Article 1. So let's go. The style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. Each state, here's where I get like pumped up. Each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right which is not by this confederation expressively delegated to the United States in Congress assembled. So,
wow.
So it's very, like a lot of people have started to come around, which is good, and say each state should be kind of looked at in its own nation. And I actually do feel that is really true. I never thought of it like that as a kid. I'm like, okay, United States as a country, we're in the continent of North America. Woohoo with Canada. We cool. And then I started to think, well, there's so many differences between states. What happens if we regard a state as a nation? And that's kind of what this does to me. It doesn't say it like that because the English is different from the 1700, the 18th century till now. But do you want to elaborate on anything there, or should I keep going?
Yeah, I think the first one is just so amazing that each state should remain its own sovereign, with its own sovereignty. I mean, that alone seems to have gone astray even currently, right now. It seems that the federal government has so much control that I'd actually go so far as to say is that that's not even the case anymore. Like the federal government has control over different states' sovereignty. Would you agree with me on that one, or?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I'll give you a prime example. Abbott and DeSantis don't want to exactly do the medical things that Biden wanted, so he said, I got to get them out of the way. Now, whether he's able to or not, who, is left to be seen. But yeah, I think the federal government overrides a lot of things. Now, there is some good things, too, like California said, we're not following your immigration laws. The federal government didn't do anything. Texas says we're not doing your gun stuff. They didn't do nothing. So, on one hand, I do feel the federal government is trying to just say, hey, we are or they mistakenly think they're the rulers or we're all their subjects or whatever word you want to use. We're all the serfs. And the states are going to do what I want them to do. But they don't seem to me as powerful as they would say. I make the argument, and people disagree with me, that they're kind of a paper tiger. They're like the bully in the lunchroom, like, give me your lunch money, but if you say no and stand up for yourself, go away. So that's how I feel. They want to control the states, but if the states stand up and show some backbone, they'll back down. But instead of going through this, okay, federal mandate, and then DeSantis saying, I'll speak you with the court, that to me seems like a lot of pain. Why can't we just do the Articles of Confederation and avoid this so we can get back to our lives? That's my analysis. You can disagree or agree with me.
No, yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's simply about, bringing back that especially that first one there, which is it's just so incremental. It's so instrumental in actually balancing out a sovereign state in general. Like, I'm not entirely sure that state can exist without imploding on itself and without fundamentally, incrementally getting more power, and then, completely tyrannizing its citizens. But the point is like you said, this system did work for 100 years or so, and it worked pretty damn well. And and a lot of people point to the 50s and 40s, right, when there was a lot of taxes, capital gains taxes, and taxes on corporations, and that's why we had the economy we did in the 50s. And it's just such an absurd argument, because also in the 50s there was a lot more freedom to do things, but the economy was better not because there was more taxes. It was better because there was our dollar was not inflated as much. We weren't in such a fucking massive debt crisis. We didn't have a $30 trillion dollar debt to deal with. So there was a lot of different things at play. It's not just one issue. But I think as soon as we stopped following that first rule of the Articles of Confederation, as soon as we started turning slowly away from the Bill of Rights, we started leaning more towards tyranny than we did in the 100 years previous. And I think really what happened is, after generations, people tend to lose touch of what the generation before and before them really grasped to. And those 100 years, people in America were very politically active. Like, that doesn't mean they ran for politics, but they were self-government, right? They governed themselves, and they would stand up if the federal government did something. And as the Industrial Revolution began to kind of take off, the turn of the 20th century, people became more complacent. And then this was an incremental process up until the 21st century, where it became easier to live, and there was less of a focus on liberty and freedom, because that almost came as self-evident. And as that became almost as self-evident, the people who were actually behind the scenes politically and in the government were making sure that they were doing everything in their power that they could, while the people were basically turning a blind eye. While people were thinking America was great, they were implementing policy that would affect years and years and years down the line. So if we want to blame anyone for where we are right now, it's so easy to point at, like you said, a Mitch McConnell or a Nancy Pelosi or even a Woodrow Wilson. Yeah. But we should blame the people. We should blame the people who let this happen, because let's just say that when the Federal Reserve Act was passed, everyone in the country protested immediately. Now, granted, I know it was passed in a sort of secret manner, but for every tyrannical law or law that even gets brought up in Congress or the Senate, forget being passed, you should protest, and you should protest massively, because if they don't see pushback from the people of this country, that really should install a bit of fear and intimidation into them, then they're going to just continue what they're doing. So I think responsibility has to be taken on the side of us.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'll say things is that I'm not saying that tyranny can't happen under the Articles. Tyranny can happen anytime. Heck, you can get tyranny from your local police department. Like,
he flew an insurrection flag at his rallies. He said
people like argue to me that, like, oh, well, you can't have tyranny locally. You can have it at the state level. Definitely, you can. And as long as you have human beings, you can have ill and malcontent. But all I'm saying is, if you have them closer to you, like I can drive to where my mayor is. I can get to where my governor is. I can do more. Like you even said, you voted in Virginia, but you didn't vote federally. And most people find that weird. Like, you don't care about federal elections?
Well, it doesn't matter as much. And
yeah.
And that's the truth. But I think that's one thing.
Matters.
Yeah. Speaking about that, I want to look up the results right now. I wonder if anything came in. I know when I was looking not too long ago. Here we go. Election day in Virginia.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think are they gonna announce it today?
They might. It depends on how. It depends on a few things, but I mean, I hope so. Okay, here we go. Virginia polls. Whoa! It's saying Democrat McAuliffe is facing 52% unfavorable numbers in VA. The poll data are wow. There's like 3 polls showing that Youngkin is up. Wow, they're saying it was a massive voter turnout, like the most in a long time.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, Youngkin. Okay, this is what poll I'm getting right now. I'm getting this poll from crowdwisdom.live. There's no NewsGuard rating on it. I'm seeing we are predicting a Youngkin 53, McAuliffe 46 kind of result. Wow, Youngkin up is 8% now. There's multiple things have called it for Youngkin. This is from the New York Post. Okay, so I don't know. It's looking like Youngkin's up right now, but I don't know. Let the ballots from underneath the desks. Let all the mail-in ballots coming in. Let those come. No, I'm kidding, YouTube. I don't think that's happening. I'm just joking around.
You're getting in trouble here. No, okay, here. Like, let's just wait, because we don't. Yeah, I don't know, but let's see. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I hate to say I'm not super invested. I think this is interesting to watch. So let's check.
Yeah. Anyways, back to the articles. One thing that I wanted to say is I have my articles up. And one of the ones that really is astonishing is article number 3, right? Which I think is a very important article, right? It simply states that states hereby enter into a league of friendship with each other for their common defense and the security of their liberties and their mutual and general welfare, binding themselves to assist each other against all force afforded to or attacks made upon them or any of them on account of religion, sovereignty, trade, or any other pretense whatever. Now, I think this is a really good article to use for an argument of peaceful divorce, because if you keep this Article 3, and let's just say we do have a peaceful divorce, Article 3 could state that under a peaceful divorce, any sort of threat from China, like you said, people are using to kind of like strawman it, or any other nation, that we hereby will come together to stop that force. So I think people get the idea of peaceful divorce as we're two completely different things. I think that we could really implement this in a true peaceful divorce, in the sense like if there's any sort of threat coming to any of our states, that we enter in an agreement where we will defend each other, even if we don't like each other, but we still have our differences in government.
Exactly. And that's actually kind of what I like, because I've read this Article 3, and most people just come up with, okay, it would be World War III. This country would work with China. This state would work with China. This one would do the EU. This one would work with Mexico. I'm like, look, if South wants to work with Mexico, I'm cool. If someone wants to work with these people, like, I'm not going to sit there and stop them. But what I do want to emphasize is one thing. I mean, I want to be very clear here. There's people in the Mises caucus I've talked to and stuff that don't know if this would work. I don't think they've seen Article 3. There's libertarians I've talked to. They don't know if this would work. And I even have friends who are like, yeah, man, I like Putin. He's a strong, and I'm not a cheerleader for Putin. I'm not a cheerleader, and I'm completely against what Xi Jinping is doing with the Uyghurs and Hong Kong and Tibet and Taiwan. But when you bring the argument that, well, Putin's going to be here tomorrow, China's going to be here tomorrow, that he has 1 billion people there, but he has all these rivals. CCP has rivals that want to take them out. They have financial issues. They're not just sitting there like, what are Americans doing? Although I know they're definitely something that I'm not saying the geopolitical threat doesn't exist. I'm saying if you take Article 3 into consideration, like you're saying, that does nullify the okay, well, you can't leave because China and Russia and whoever else will be there. They'll be there tomorrow. Like they'll drop everything that they're doing, because
I know it's just so absurd. It's just such a straw man. It's like, let me take like something that's so unlikely and improbable. Let me take a possibility, no matter how statistically improbable that is and how nonsensical it is, and let's use that as an argument to take down a very nuanced idea. Like, this is the thing about peaceful divorce, right? There's so many words, there's so many doctrines out there from Greek philosophies, from Socrates, none that he's read because he didn't write any work, but the works which Plato wrote and for Socrates, the works of let's just say Kant, the works of Hegel. Whether you agree with these guys or not, there's lots of people who have written very, very, very nuanced and complex philosophies on these things that we could piece together, make our own. I've written a little bit, and kind of do this thing and not just simply look at it one-dimensionally, like, oh, let's just divorce. And right, like, what if we came up with like something I was thinking about doing, something called the Articles of Decentralization, which is basically something for a peaceful divorce, which would decentralize. Like, for instance, let's just say there's a side of America that's going to be blue or Democrat. They want to keep their fucking government. They want to keep exactly the way it is. Well, that's fine. Well, let's just say we don't want to keep our government. Like, in this peaceful divorce, I think this is the main thing that we should discuss is, in this divorce, does the state remain the same, or do we change it? You get what I'm kind of saying? Is it just going to be the mechanism that it is now, split in half, or is one side going to keep a mechanism and one side going to be able to change their mechanism? Because I think if we can get rid of the federal government as it is now, the ability to really change everything becomes much easier. It becomes much easier because you can change things at a local level. which you can do now. But when you have the federal government deterring your ability to do that, which is what it's been doing through taxes, through many other policies, I'm just not sure. What do you think?
Let me think about it. So mechanisms, you're talking split in half. What I could say is this: if parts of California or parts of Texas want to live or do something a certain way, it's going to be much, much easier if you just have Greg Abbott as governor. Even though I don't agree with everything he does, or whoever's governor, it's going to be much easier, like you said, to get stuff done simply if you don't have this bloated central institution that can't balance a checkbook, can't even solve crime in their own district. Like, I find it interesting. Even people argue, oh, Washington has to go over and fix this country. How about you fix your, like, before you fix Syria, I don't know, fix your own, like, damn district that has a bunch of, like, stupid, laws and crime that you can't.
Yes.
Out. So, yeah, the federal government, to me, is not really effective at anything. It's not really good at anything. We saw with Biden that he's not doing anything about the border. I didn't even agree with the wall. I said, hey, can we end the drug war, and can we end a lot of these bad policies, stop subsidizing companies and subsidizing people to come here, and then school choice, and we solve a lot of immigration problems, but no one's doing that. So immigrants come over, Greg Abbott activates the National Guard. And I'm not saying I like Greg Abbott or DeSantis or Neom or anything. There's things I really disagree with them. But then DeSantis says, I'll help you. Kristi Neom says, I'll help you. So here's the thing. It shows to me states can work together. Maybe red states will work together. Maybe blue states will work together. As we're seeing, states can flip. Things can change. So I think this is a good idea to enter in an agreement, because that really debunks the biggest thing, one of the biggest complaints, which is just China. We'd like you to have your freedom. We'd like states to be sovereign, but we can't because China. And to me, it's almost kind of like a bunch of bureaucrats are like, come up with a good excuse. Come up with a good excuse.
They'll nuke us all. They'll destroy us. They'll drop bombs on your head. Come on, please, guys, don't do it. If there's a peaceful divorce, they'll nuke us. Come on.
Yeah, that is actually what a lot of people do. Or they just say, why don't they just follow the Constitution? Well, no, they're not really doing that now. They haven't been doing it for about 100 years. I'm skeptical the CIA or FBI or NSA who are watching, are going to do it anytime soon. Even if you swap presidents for the end of time, I don't think it's going to make that big of an impact. State and local, I can kind of get, but federal, I kind of don't care.
Yeah. Listen, here's the deal. One thing that's somewhat decent about our system is we do have a division of branches, separation of powers, which is a good thing. But I think the problem is that the executive branch has increasingly grown more and more powerful, and the basic ability to pass legislation through Congress they've completely halted, and they've been this way for a while now, where getting any sort of legislation passed through it's a problem. Like, just think about it. Like, you're listening to those Articles of Confederation, right? The viewers listening, and you see how they were talking and how they all worked together to get this, and they all ratified, and they worked together collectively, organically, to formulate a better system that would increase their strength, really. And they worked together and they did it. We can't even get basic legislation through Congress. And when it doesn't go through Congress, the president simply orders it through executive decree. And I'm sorry, Trump did this too. Mm-hmm. Obama did this too. FDR did this too. So when Congress can't get their way because they can't act like grown-ups, because it's a bunch of partisan BS and a bunch of partisan arguments, then the executive branch is like, well, whatever's within my authority, rubber stamp it. Anything. Can I do this? Can I mandate it? No. Well, you can't mandate it. It's unconstitutional. Well, can I ask OSHA to mandate it? Yep. Boom. Rubber stamp it. So they keep doing this, which shows you that Congress is broken. I'm not saying it might be that way forever, but Congress is obviously broken to a point where nothing goes through. Like things like, let's just take the infrastructure bill for instance, right? Let's just take the reconciliation bill. No one can agree on that because it's filled with so much stuff that no one's even ever read. No one's read the whole bill. I mean, I bet you even scholars haven't read the 7,250-page bill. That shows you there's a problem, right? A 7,000-page bill. That is a serious... Dude, do you understand? Like, legislation is not even supposed to be close to that long. Just think about it. Look at the Articles of Confederation. How complex is this shit? It's very, very complex, and it's put together very simply. It's not trying to
pages. Exactly.
It's not trying to hide anything and obscure the truth and put things in secrecy. It's direct, and it's talking about a complicated thing. The Articles of Confederation. What came before the Bill of Rights, what came before our Constitution, and it was very complicated. Nothing takes 7,000 pages. The Bible is in 7,000 pages. The Quran is in 7,000 pages. These legislations are basically
they don't read them anyway. So actually, one point I was going to say is like, have you ever seen that meme like when Nancy Pelosi says to Ron Paul, why don't you vote yes on these things? Because I read them. Because he reads. Congress is broken. Even forget Biden or Trump rubber stamping. They don't read them anyway. I don't think they actually look at them at all. They're just like, yes.
I think they read the things that they want to use to use as a example to pass the legislation. It's like, oh, this is a bill about gay rights. Example, this passed this bill about gay rights, but in the other 2,000 pages, it talks about how the NSA has more power to spy on you and gather your information. For instance, in that infrastructure bill, there was a piece in it that said every car by 2024 will have anti-alcohol driving technology built into it and biometric scanners built into it. Like, they don't tell you that stuff. That's a legitimate thing in the bill, that it's going to, all cars past a certain time are going to have technology that you're going to have to biometrically scan your face, and it's going to measure whether you have alcohol in your system or not. And that's going to be in all new cars. Like, they don't tell you that stuff. And that's just what some of the stuff I've gathered. I mean, these bills are ridiculous. For instance, like this right here. This bill right here, which is one of the ones I showed you, but I didn't go over it all the way. Like, this is a fairly short bill, like when it concerns it. But this bill was in a whole act, which was filled with many pages, right? So the title, it's pretty. It's actually not that indirect. But when you read into it, one of the parts about it that I think is just crazy is it says this: the historical underpinnings of the Holocaust and other historical genocides in the context of how increased lower levels of hate, ridicule, and dehumanization led to larger acts of violence. Slavery and anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and other forms of historical dehumanization and discrimination. The ignored and untold story of the indigenous people of Virginia and North America. The untold histories of other groups historically underrepresented in American world history. The advisory committee shall provide recommendations for the insurance of Board of Education guidelines for local school division staff, including teachers and school counselors, to offer age-appropriate anti-bias education for students. The recommendations for such guidance shall include recognition that anti-bias and anti-discrimination education is the work and responsibility of all staff within the local school division. An emphasis on diversity and building a community of empathy, respect, understanding, and connection. Examination of how lower levels of hate, ridicule, that's the same thing repeating itself. But anyways, what would you call that? What would you call that? And this is passed. This is approved in Virginia state law.
To be honest, that sounds like a lot of word salad that sounds nice. It doesn't even, like, it says recommendation. Like, what do you even recommend? Like, okay, be nice to people, treat people pretty cool. Like, be a cool dude. Like, to me, that's basically. It doesn't even suggest. That's why I don't like most legislation, because it just dances around things.
It's like so vague on purpose. Like,
nice. It's like word salad. Like,
exactly.
Daniel, what you asked me what the show is about, and it says saying libertarianism or capitalism or the principles of anarcho-capitalism. I say, well, you know, it's a nice show. We talk about some good things and stuff, and it's good, and we care about all people, and we like freedom, and we do good things and stuff. And yeah, woohoo. Build back better, make America great again.
Exactly.
Hope and change. Like, you gave me word salad. It's like, okay, it's nice word salad. It doesn't mean anything to me. Like that. What do you want to do? Like, I would just like a bill. Like, okay, let's end the drug war. Okay.
Yeah, like fuck the cartel act. I'd vote for that immediately. I don't even have to read the bill because I know it's so mean and so rude that there's nothing inside. Like anything that sounds good, the Patriot Act, anything, the infrastructure bill, the voting right, like all this, we the people, like all that stuff that sounds good, it's filled with pure evil and despotism.
Yeah,
but,
or FISA. Let's renew that. It sounds good.
What exactly.
Oh,
FISA.
On you. Like, let's renew, like, you know, the Help Syrians bill. What does it do? Put sanctions. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, everything is reversed. Like they're trying to mask what they're doing by naivete and compassion. They're doing the work of postmodernism, but more importantly of that, they're doing the work of disguising their agenda under a cover, right? It's like they have this book and the cover looks a certain way, but inside is full of a wide range of radical ideas. But if no one ever opens the book up, then the cover is going to be the widespread understanding of its contents. So people accept the cover as the contents of what's inside because they're not really looking at what's inside. But what's inside is this. And for teachers to get their license, they have to not only teach this and help students go about bias training and sometimes even being split apart in rooms to learn what separation looks like and white people on one side of the classroom and black people on the other side of the classroom. The teachers have to go through this however long it takes for them to renew their license. Like they can't get a license without doing this stuff now.
It's ridiculous. I think this stuff is failing because, like, first of all, it doesn't mean anything. Like, it's not meaningful. To me, a lot of Republican and Democrat bills just don't mean anything. Like, like I can write a bill. Actually, I can make legislation that's shorter than the articles and do a bunch of stuff. I can make it one. I actually can level a challenge. I could make more meaningful bills in one page, in 2 paragraphs. We do this, this, and this. We end the drug war. These things are no longer crimes. This is still a crime. People who have these charges are free. People who have these charges can go on parole. These people have to stay in jail if they did a violent act involving it. That's it. I can do that in a few sentences, not even. And that to me is a bill. Or just, you can even write a bill that says no gun laws shall be passed ever. No socialist programs shall be passed ever. Okay. You don't actually need, you can do things in 2 sentences if you're really good. Like, it's like the whole George Carlin argument about the 10 Commandments. If you've ever seen that stand up, he's like, Moses could have done them in 2. Thou shalt always be honest and faithful to to your provider, and thou shalt try, real hard not to kill anyone unless they pray to a different God than you do, as a joke, But he really said, hey, you can condense a lot of, on the left and the right, real cool sounding stuff down into 2 or 3 sentences. Like Nietzsche said, my goal is to knock out what someone's big work, what they've done, in like 2 to 10 seconds.
Yeah, Nietzsche's quote, which is one of the most arrogant but funny quotes, is, I can write in 1 sentence what you can write in 1 book.
Yeah.
Right? He said that quote, but he wasn't lying. He wasn't lying at all, right? When you read Nietzsche, you realize that each paragraph is more like a chapter, but it's a chapter that is so broad but yet so specific. It's like, you have really complicated thoughts, and we tend to not be able to communicate our thoughts the way they are up here. Nisha could perfectly illustrate his thoughts, and each paragraph was like a thought construed with another thought, while making it actually abstract and tying it to another kind of broader theory, which is very, very difficult to do. But that's why Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot. How writing about yourself decreases your depression, increases your self-confidence and positivity about yourself. Because if you don't know yourself and you don't really know who you are, it's going to be hard to like who you are, because you're not really sure of yourself. And writing about yourself thoroughly, maybe every week, every day, just a little bit, kind of lets you unpack what's going on up here and organize it, whether you know it or not.
Yeah, I think that's imperative for a lot of people to do. But even going back to the bill thing, like, I don't even find that to be, I just find that to be efficient. Like, hey, people trying to explain concepts, I think, for so long, then it's kind of like, okay, well, you beat it to death. A lot of these laws, to me, are long because they want to do nefarious things, or they want to put a bunch of nice sounding garble in there. And you could really do a lot of things with a few sentences and call it a day. That's what I endeavored to do. And then if you want, then if you're a private company, a real private company, then you can set your own rules of enforcement and play based on your terms of agreement, your EULAs, user license agreement, if you have like a software and things like that. So what I also want to let people know is private enforcement is a lot more powerful than formally created legislation. If you don't believe that, take a look at your society. Like, why are people either getting along or not? It's because of unwritten rules that you have down, customary law potentially, and social norms that affect behavior.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And it's looking like Youngkin's going to win. He's up in a lot of polls right now. 95% of the votes in. You have multiple polls calling it for him. So we'll wait, but it's definitely, don't want to jinx it, but it's definitely looking like he's up in multiple polls, even left-wing polls, which is kind of astonishing. But yeah, he's they have him up by a solid 4 points. I think that's the average. So I don't know. I think one thing that's interesting that we kind of discussed was like, do you think that media purposely kind of nationalizes things to take away from the local side of things, because that's what actually produces more change? So it's like, let's get people involved more into national races and the presidential races, and keep them out of the local politics, because that's where true grassroots change and policy change happens. Do you think that there's some sort of an organized effort to do that, or do you think it's sort of maybe just random? Or
here's the thing. I've never worked for media like that, like Vice and stuff, so I don't 100% know, but I can tell you this based on what I see in their coverage and things like that. If there's any like local protests about things, if there's any local stories, I notice that big mainstream medias don't want to touch it, don't want to cover it, unless it supports their narrative. But most of all, I don't think they like local politics. Like, yeah, they'll cover Youngkin, they'll cover a few Republicans, they'll do what they, they'll do some national, federal races. But yeah, I don't think they really want to take a look at grassroots stuff, because that would cause problems for them, in my opinion, in the long term. Because if they look at grassroots movements, they're probably going to be very contradictory to what they want. And it's very contradictory to keeping the machine going. Because a lot of grassroots people would probably have some very extremely different ideas than any of them, and ideas that you wouldn't even hear. Like, Give you an example of this, which I think is interesting. The whole Supreme Court thing, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I see people on the left like, we need to keep her. She had a great life. Oh, she was awesome, all that. Then I see people on the right like, get Amy Coney Barrett in and stuff. I don't think she's that great, especially with the thing. Her and Kavanaugh didn't even actually rule against this medical procedure. So not really impressed there. But what I will say is I never saw the media echo the idea that why is one person in the whole United States or one court able to have this much power? Maybe we should decentralize it. Oh, they don't ever talk about ideas of decentralization. It's always, well, this guy, Fox News and CNN are like, well, my left-wing authoritarian guy is going to be great. And the right side's, no, my right authoritarian guy is going to be great. He loves America. Well, mine's more collectivist. He wants everyone to work together. Well, where's the news? I don't see many news stations saying authoritarianism and collectivism just doesn't work. What about grassroots and decentralized movements? I don't see that. I don't see central institutions, whether it's the media, tech, or anything like that, a pharmaceutical, ever promoting decentralized solutions, much like the pharmaceutical industry is never keen when someone's like, hey, I found a natural cure to this. You don't have to be on this. And oh, the doctor, something happened to it. We don't know,
Yeah, like with ivermectin, it's not like a really, I don't know if you consider it organic, but it's cheap and there's no patents for it anymore. So it's basically cheap as dirt. Like it's cheap as dirt because no one really owns it. It's not no big, pharmaceutical corporation owns it. And look what the FDA puts out. You're not a horse. You're not a cow. Stop taking horse dewormer. But the FDA knows that ivermectin, this medicine, has been used in billions of individuals to treat different, for instance, vision issues, to treat river blindness. And they know it's won a Nobel Prize for treating humans. And they also know that it's been shown to decrease the viral load and viral replication, to decrease viral replication. Although, as studies show, each study says there needs to be more studies on this. And the reason why studies say that there needs to be more studies on it is because there's something there. There's a lot of studies that haven't come out. So I'm not saying that ivermectin be used to treat COVID at all. I'm not saying that it's a successful treatment. All I'm saying is that there's more studies underway. The point is it's not a horse dewormer. It's a horse dewormer when you take it in massive doses and it's in a paste form and you give it to horses, right? But the idea that you can basically formulate this thing as a horse dewormer, when in actuality, we give Benadryl to dogs, but we don't call it dog medicine. We don't call Xanax a dog anxiety medicine. No, it's just two different doses and two different forms in a lot of cases. So I really don't like how they've done that, and they painted kind of Joe Rogan as this like anti-vaxxer, which is kind of funny because if you've ever watched this podcast, you realize that he's not an anti-vaxxer, and all he does is talk about health. Dude, every Joe Rogan episode, maybe not every, but a lot of Joe Rogan episodes, he's going to point in there that how important health, fitness, and taking medication, being truly healthy is, which is the opposite of what these media corporations have been putting out in the last 2 years. When do they talk about natural immunity? When do they talk about being healthy, working out? Always get the vaccine. Get the vaccine. Get it.
So here's the thing. To me, you're never going to get centralized institutions because it's against their interest, their purposive interest based on purpose of existing, to ever like decentralized solutions. Even Youngkin, if he wins, that's still kind of a centralized solution. It's just it's just a better centralized solution than Terry, which I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, man.
So you're never going to get the media, in my opinion, big media anyway gets other people, grassroots media, and we are changing stuff to do different things. But you're not going to get them. Like, I don't see anything favorable, hardly, on cryptocurrency on big media. I just don't. Like, people talk about it, but a lot, just like just like people in big banks, what do? Especially, CEO of JP Morgan says Bitcoin's a scam. It'll crash. That's all I see. Every big banker is like, Bitcoin's going to crash. It's a scam. It's bad. Oh, but look, the price changes all the time. You don't want this. I'm like, come on. Like, I see what you're doing. Much like you'll never see the paper industry like, oh, can hemp build things and do things? Is it stronger than paper? No, it's not. Congressman. And I'll give you another example that you know of, because you trade stock, or you did stocks, crypto, is the whole stocks debacle. What did the hedge funds do immediately? Oh, turn Robinhood off, turn this off. We made a bad bet. Help me, save me. They're never, ever, ever. Can you see hedge funds ever saying like, well, you should bet against us, or you should allow the pleb. You should allow, I love this meme, the poor's to do a capitalism. The poor's can't do a capitalism. Only we can do a capitalism. They should play by, we should have socialism for the poor and capitalism for the rich. And we can't lose any gains. I think that's, am I wrong there? Like, centralized institutions are never, hardly ever going to promote grassroots things unless it's in their interest, which it usually isn't. That's why I don't think media would ever cover any grassroots thing or anything that's radically different. I don't ever expect anything. I don't ever expect any positive coverage on CNN, Fox, even OAN of like things like minarchism or ANCAP thought or anything, or classical liberalism. I just don't. Or if they do, it's going to be very minimal. But they'll probably paint me as, I guarantee you, if I went on CNN and said like, okay, here's voluntarism, they'd probably paint it as something. They find some way to paint it bad.
Well, it's easy to paint an anarchist. All you have to say he's an anarchist, and everyone starts screaming and crying because they think that he's going to call for violence and, destroy everything. Like, anarchy has been associated with violence because if you go back and you look at the original sort of implementation of anarchy, it was in a communistic way, in a socialistic way, and it did go very bad. But as Michael Malice says, is all the real large-scale attempts of anarchy have been under the notion of socialism, communism, or another doctrine. But like, as far as a sort of laissez-faire anarchist system that's not like undertoned by socialism or communism, for that matter, could actually work. And when you hear Michael Malice talk, when you really listen to Michael Malice talk, you see that, wow, this guy's not that radical at all. It simply seems like he wants to get rid of the state. The question is, how do you go about doing that? Like, I'd agree with people when they say, is the state fundamentally corrupt? Yes. Is the state fixable? I don't think it is. Not this state, at least.
No.
I don't think it's fixable. I think there's a way you can decrease it, meaning like, okay, we're not going to make the state better, but we're simply going to decrease its ability to make our lives worse. I think that you can minimize the state's authority, and I think that that's like doable right now. I don't think it requires really that much work. It does require getting the people in the office who are Mises people, who will decrease the state's capability, who will put in state legislation, who will go to Congress and work with other people to get bills. But the way that this happens, guys, for those listening, is you have to join a movement, particularly the Mises movement. The reason why it's so good is that it's not really predicated on ideology as much as it is basic fundamental principles of natural law and of being aware of what the state will be, and how that every sort of action that you do that benefits the state then goes against your well-being, whether you know it or not. So, like, for instance, every time you pay your taxes, you're abiding by the state. It's not to say you shouldn't pay taxes. It's to say that remember that while you're complicit, it's hard. While you're complicit in the system you're trying to destroy, it's going to be very hard to destroy it. So you have to stop being complicit and start being implicit in your actions against the state. Take action to reduce its measures. Take action to vote in people who aren't red, who aren't blue, but who will truly start doing stuff on a small scale. And I think that's where it starts.
Yes. I would actually say I disagree with Michael Malice. It has.
Oh, yeah, I do too. But I'm just saying, he's a good example.
Yeah. No, well, okay. A large scale depends what you, okay. Let's define, it depends what you define as large scale, but Hong Kong worked pretty good.
That's a good point, actually.
Until they probably should have had better. They probably should have had some Second Amendment thing going so China couldn't roll. But okay, it wasn't perfect. But China did take over Hong Kong. But here's the thing: for a very long time, Hong Kong was crushing it.
They had a very good economy, man.
Yeah, and everyone said, "Oh, Hong Kong, that's super capitalism." And I'm like, "Yeah, look how good it's doing." They're like, "Well, yeah, I guess so." And I'm like, "Okay, that was very close to a free market. It wasn't perfect." There's Chiron, which is in Mexico, which is doing pretty good. They decreased their murder rate to like 9 a year, which to me in Mexico, that's better than Chicago's a bigger landmass. I get it, but that's better than some American cities. It depends if you want to count Somalia post-Bahre to be that. It wasn't exactly there, but it's close. And then you can also consider one fact is, interestingly enough, is from what I understand, correct me, I could really be wrong here, but I studied Detroit after everything got. Now, I'm not going to say social welfare got better, but I'm saying things are slowly getting better. Not to the point where they had a government, but there doesn't seem to be any tendency to centralization there right now, even after losing the government. So, and that's in a first world country. You can correct me. I need to talk to someone from Detroit to verify that. So I could be
wrong.
Wait,
say that again. What you were saying?
So this is Detroit's a complicated one. I don't think social welfare is good. I'm not planning a vacation in Detroit.
Yeah.
But as it's recovering, there doesn't seem to be a tendency towards centralization like it had before, from what I'm told from people.
Well, I think that there's, in a lot of ways, that's true.
That's America. I'm not talking Somalia or Hong Kong.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think this is the key reason why things have been changing, and they're changing rapidly, and they're changing for the worse of us, of the people, is because we have been without suffering for a long time. Like, just think about someone who was born in, let's just say, 1870, right? 1880, 1890, 1900, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Their whole life, they went through 2 world wars. They just were born after a civil war. Lots of conflicts, lots of suffering, the depression, a recession, so much suffering is that, and which suffering, really helps you understand what you can lose. And you have something to lose, right? You have your liberty, your freedom to lose. But people in Detroit, unlike the people in America who don't have the conception of losing things, because they take freedom and liberty as being self-evident. People in Detroit have been put through years of just hell and bloodshed, and the worst economy, some of the worst crime rates, the highest murder rates, the worst conditions in homes. So a literal decaying of their inner economy and their inner shell. Like, they were completely obliterated. Now, when these people are on the road back to recovery, you think they're going to resort back to those same ways and those same policies that got them there in the first place? I don't think so. I think they're going to be more like the people in the 20s and in the 30s, and they're going to tend more towards free markets and capitalism because they've seen just how much damage a welfare state can do.
Yeah. And not only do they see that, they see the fact that central planning doesn't work. 1 or 2 people, or even a group of people in a room, depending on your preference between democracy and dictatorship, cannot figure out what is best for you. They just can't. Even if they wanted to, even if they were getting together there and being all altruistic, they don't know what's best for you. And they don't have the right to make you do it, even if they could figure it out. And I think they're figuring that. People are seeing that now. And yeah, I do like the meme or the thing that said hard times create strong men create good times. It gets better. I think it's more complicated than that. I think there are different nuances to that. That's not, but in principle, it does make sense. I'm not gonna say it's completely wrong. What I will say is people are starting to realize that decentralized solutions, while they're not perfect, are better than central institutions trying to make judgment calls and trying to make those judgment calls in your life. No matter how nefarious or altruistic they may be, they just don't work. It just doesn't work. Even if I decided that, forget the medical procedure, if I decide everybody need to exercise and drink more water tomorrow, I wouldn't know if that would work. One, because certain people can't exercise. What if you have a hip condition? And exercising is a good thing generally, right? And even if I decided that, I can't enforce that. Like that wouldn't be right to be like, okay, you go to the gym or we'll go after you. Like Bloomberg tried to make sodas illegal or something like that back in the day. Like, oh, that's how you're going to fight obesity? Yeah, I'll make sodas super expensive. I'm like, that'll just make sodas go underground. Just like trying to ban Newports. Like, I laugh at all this stuff, but it just, to me, it's ridiculous. Like, why are you trying to do this? Why are people so naive? And I think people are starting to wake up, though, that these systems just aren't going to work. But the big question is, what do we replace it with? Because everybody says, okay, Kareem, I think this is bad. I think there are oligarchs pushing my representatives. I'm not a fan of this. I'm not a fan of what they're doing. I'm not a fan of Congress or any of these people or the companies behind them, the pharmaceutical, the military, any of that, the industrial complex, any of that stuff. It's easy to say that. I can say I hate this. I dislike this. And anyone can rant, but it's not so easy to know what you'd replace it with. I think the Articles of Confederation is what I'd replace it with, regardless of who wins governor races or not.
Yeah, I agree. It's like this is just a small battle and a bigger battle, which is to decentralize everything, really. But it seems to be that maybe one of the only ways we can get to decentralization is electing certain officials who do believe in a central system, but are more willing to adopt decentral policies. Like, okay, so again, take Youngkin, for example. Like you said, he's obviously, a capitalist, and he also believes in the government, and he's not an anarchist or even a minarchist.
No,
but he's more willing to do the basics, to protect their freedom and liberties, and more willing to accept policies that could decentralize institutions. He's pro Bitcoin. He's pro cryptocurrency. He's anti Federal Reserve, right? Like he recognizes that stuff, and that's small. I'm not saying that's like big steps, but I'm saying you slowly get people in who are more willing to adopt certain policies because you don't have a choice until we start getting a large movement of people who are minarchists, who are anarchists. I like to see Michael Malice run, guys like Dave Smith, which I think is going to happen. I think it's a matter of time.
I was going to say, I apologize. I don't see Michael Malice running for anything. He said he was joking about being House Speaker.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't necessarily see him running.
Dave Smith might. Spike Cohen. Do you know Spike Cohen?
Yeah. I'm not like perfectly, I haven't looked at all his stuff, but I know he's pretty much like a full-on, would you say he's a full-on anarchist or?
Yeah, Spike Cohen's Jorgensen was a minarchist, kind of. Spike's an anarchist. And yeah, I like some things Youngkin said about Bitcoin and stuff. I saw that, like, okay, yeah, he's pro-capitalist. But really, like Tim Pool said, and I'm pretty sure this works now, is you say I'm against you. I'm not even like, if I wanted to campaign, I'm not even campaigning that hard. I'm say I don't like CRT. I don't like mandates. You should be able to do what you want, put whatever you want in your body. I'm not a fan of masks, and I want to decrease centralization through a free state project, nullification, and then eventually talk about secession. That's all I say. I think that can actually beat any. That can actually, if you're a regular person, that can beat most anybody now. I know that sounds crazy, but I do believe that it can beat most.
No, you're right. I think it might even be more simpler than that.
Yeah, it can beat almost any Democrat or Republican, because I don't even trust. Even though Republicans say things sometimes I like, or Democrats will say something I like here and there, just don't trust them. I have such bad trust issues because of what happened with Ron Paul. So I'm having, even in the Youngkin or any, I just have a real hard time rooting for Republicans, because after George W. Bush and Ron Paul, it ruined it for me, if that makes any sense. I kind of always had like those guys again. And
yeah,
I think the Democrats, a similar thing after Bernie Sanders got screwed over. I think the two big things that got Trump in 2016 was they screwed over Bernie Sanders and the WikiLeaks. Those are, if they wouldn't have done that, they'd been fine. If they'd run Bernie Sanders in 2016, Trump would have lost, and they'd have been good. Because Bernie Sanders is still hugely popular. And a lot of people think he's the real deal. And I do believe he is actually the real deal. It's just his economics are so bad. But Joe Rogan endorsed him. Like Bernie Sanders.
I don't agree, man. I think in the beginning he was more real deal when you're talking about that Hillary race, but he supports Biden and what he's doing. He openly supports what he's doing. He's a partisan hack just like everybody else is. He doesn't want to admit the fact that what Biden's doing is terrible. He's a socialist, right? So I get why he agrees with a lot of the things with Biden does.
Yeah, but he would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of stuff where, like, for instance, Crystal Ball, interviewed Bernie, and she would ask questions, and he didn't really have an answer. Either, it's Biden. It's all about supporting the environment. It's the millionaires and the billionaires, and
I'm not arguing for that. I'm just.
But I've realized that when it came to Biden, he supported him. When it came to Hillary, he ended up supporting her. So he doesn't have a spine. But not only does he have a spine, I see that in a lot of his in his so-called policies that he believes in, and a lot of the so-called policies he doesn't believe in. Like, he gives room. He doesn't seem to really have any solid principles, like he'll just vote for Biden because he's the Democrat candidate. Like someone like that, if he was just a pure socialist and he truly believed in socialism and he did not chill for the Democratic Party, he did not give up on principles, I would respect him. I'd respect him a lot. I would disagree with him fundamentally, but I'd respect the fact that, he stands on his principles and he's not going to vote for someone who's just a complete lunatic. He's not going to say that someone's competent when someone's not competent. He's not going to, Trump's this and Trump's that, just to sort of shill for the Democratic Party. He's not going to go out and campaign for Biden. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's not that he's a socialist. Like, I disagree with that, but it's that he doesn't hold on his principles, which is just, I find that gross. Like, if you're going to be a socialist, be a socialist. I don't care. I mean, if you get into government, then it's one thing. It starts affecting my life. But at least stand true to what you believe in. Like, with any sort of person, I love anyone, not just I don't love politicians, but just anyone in general who stays true to what they are, to what they believe in. I respect. I have a deep respect for.
Yeah. All I'm arguing is this. I'm not saying he didn't chill. He definitely chilled. I'm not saying he's a good dude. I'm not saying all I'm saying is I think he could have beat Trump in 2016.
I do. Well,
I think. I'm not an expert on that, but I think he could have.
You mean in 2016?
Yeah. I think he could have beat Trump in 2016.
He had a lot of popular. I feel like his run in 2016 seemed like way more energy and momentum was there than 2020 for sure. I mean, I didn't even I knew a little bit about Bernie because he was in Vermont, which is close to New Hampshire, which is where basically a lot of my family's from. So I had, known about him, and they were the first state to legalize gay marriage, the marijuana laws and a lot of stuff like that. But I remember just like all of the momentum in like people my age at the time, because in 2016 I was 15 years old. So I was 15 years old, and a lot of people knew about Bernie. And I remember, getting out of a situation and meeting all these people who were talking about Bernie. There was like a lot of hype around him for younger people. Now, mainly it was just weed and shit like that, but still, he was very popular then.
Oh yeah. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying anything more positive about him because I don't agree with most of what he's doing. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, and going on an hour 30 minutes. So I am going to end this one.
Yeah.
But, we'll continue with the Articles of Confederation next time. And I appreciate you doing 2 back-to-back episodes.
Absolutely, man. Just make sure you send me both of these because, I mean, we touched over almost everything.
Yeah. Millionaires and billionaires. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this, go to the LP Mises Caucus to keep the Ron Paul revolution going. And this is Kareem with the Essential Libertarians, giving you the tools for self-governance. If you also want to check out Danny Beatro's work, you can type in Daniel B in YouTube and check out his channel, The Quantum Effect. Take it easy, everyone. See you in the